He's actually unable to physically be in Vegas right now, so we have him on a Google Hangout. There's like not a really good speaker setup here because he's just gonna be talking from my laptop through this microphone, which is going to be awful, by the way. So if you want to hear his part of the talk, which is actually the really good part, you should please move up towards the front, because sound goes as like 1 over r cubed or something, and so you want r to be small. What's that? He can see me, so the camera is pointed at me. Yeah, there's a lot of details here that are kind of complicated.
First row is available for everyone, so move up. Move on the second microphone.
She's mic, and then there's the mic on me.
This mic's on there?
Hello. I don't know if this mic is on. Jacob, can you hear me, by the way? Okay, cool. I'm gonna turn your volume up so we can hear you.
Hey, audience, can you hear me all right over there?
Ouch. I can just take this microphone off. It's like karaoke. Here, try speaking again, Jacob.
All right. Hey, audience, can you hear me over there?
Yes!
Woo! Alright, we have victory. Small victory. Is there an intro, or should I just start talking? Okay. Formalities.
Yep. Welcome, everybody. Now we have Jacob Hoffman Andrews. He is the talking head. And Jan Zhu from the EFF here to talk about how EFF is making starttls resistant to active attacks.
That was the worst talk title I've ever written, by the way. I'm really impressed that there's people here. Alright, so let's figure out how to present in Google Docs. There we go. Cool. Okay, so my name is Jan. Can you guys hear me okay? Sounds a little weird. Okay. Sorry, I'm yelling. And Jacob Hoffman Andrews is the disembodied head you just saw, and Peter Eckersley is so disembodied that he's not here. But we all work at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. How many of you have heard of EFF? Awesome. So I'm not going to say what it is, but we're here. You should learn more about us if you come to our booth. So Para actually gave a great talk earlier today about starttls as this like awesome thing that everyone should implement. But in reality, SMTP email transmission is mostly insecure. How many people knew that? Okay, so yeah, some of these slides are going to be things you knew. So this was what Per said earlier, right? If you have, if you have some mail servers, like Per could be on your network doing this and looking at passwords if you're not using starttls because things are just sent unencrypted. And also, guess who else can be doing that? The NSA. So here's a slide from XKeyscore that shows data from email sessions and Facebook sessions and so forth being collected and indexed. And so your email could end up like this in an NSA database. And from the Prism slides, we see that they're doing this at scale, which means they're using passive surveillance of unencrypted traffic, probably. So here's what my colleague Peter says are the 4 kinds of threats we think about when we say email is insecure. Passive attackers such as the NSA and PAIR in your office, passive attackers with a special power of key compromise, active attackers, and especially sophisticated active attacks, and we'll get into what those mean. So earlier today, how many people were at the talk? Okay, so earlier today, passive attackers, we all know, you turn on starttls, you're good. But how are we doing on that? So as of, when is this? June 2013, right after Snowden happened, we weren't doing so good. So Gmail seemed to have starttls, but their cert wasn't actually valid, and none of these other 3 big mail providers were doing anywhere near as good as Gmail. And EFF actually kind of formally did a survey that we called Encrypt the Web, where we asked service providers, which of these things are you doing? And so we have things like supports HTTPS, supports HTTPS with forward secrecy, supports starttls. And when we started, there was a lot of red and gray. Like, people weren't encrypting mail, But then we kept bothering them, and finally by like May 2014, we see a lot more green. So let's see, like Dropbox, Yahoo, LinkedIn, Sonic already had it, Twitter. Wow, cool, we're doing good. And Gmail recently released this data that shows that email encryption on average with starttls has been rising like 33 to 58% depending on how you look at it since December of last year. Oh, so by the way, we're really interested in pulling this graph further back in time, and we just like don't really know how things like encrypted web and Snowden have affected starttls, and that's where you come in. So we have some scripts that you can run on your mail history to see percentage of starttls encryption and so forth. So but you know, there's also passive attacks with sophisticated assistance, which is key theft in this case. You know, what's the easiest way for attackers to read a lot of email? I actually just said it, key theft. So normally in TLS, you have these long-term session keys. Long-term keys. I'm sure you all know this. So if you steal the private key with something like Heartbleed or just by compromising the server, you get all the mail. But if you use Perfect Forward Secrecy, the damage isn't as bad because you can only compromise from that point forward. But how do we turn on Perfect Forward Secrecy for SMTP if it's so important? You support TLS 1.2. But, you know, how does a server say that I only want to use TLS 1.2? Right. And the third sort of attack is active network attacks, which are really easy with starttls in case you missed it during the earlier talk. Because the way starttls works is very opportunistic. One side says, I want starttls, and the other says, I also want starttls. And then, you know, you have this negotiation. But, you know, as one of Prayer's followers points out, you can just, if you're on the network, you can just strip out that starttls. And then we just fall back to insecure SMTP, and we're back where we started. You can also do a TLS man in the middle. A lot of SMTP servers that use starttls don't have valid certificates, and that is rarely enforced. So you can see in this graph from Facebook on the far left, of the servers that support starttls, only about half demonstrated a valid TLS certificate. So what do we do for these other other two things, ignoring the third one for a second? So on the web, we have something called HSTS, which is a way for a server to say, when you see my get clone. And I'll let Jacob do the second part of this talk if I can figure out how to get to this. So we're going to have him do a screen share on Google Hangouts, which is pretty new for everyone. Okay, Jacob, so your face is now on the screen.
So I also need a microphone. So hi everyone. I want to make sure you can hear me loud and clear. So I'm going to say starttls, and I want you guys to say everywhere. So when I say starttls, you say everywhere. Starttls.
Everywhere.
Jacob, I think people are like not wanting to sit in the front as much as I wanted them to. So if you could like talk really loudly, that'd be great. And I'll try to do some microphone work too.
Right. So Jan mentioned we already have a bunch of work up on GitHub. This is something you can download and try out today if you run a postfix server and if you're moderately brave. So you know, she described our pragmatic approach. It's one that's informed both by internet experience with the HSTS header and HSTS preloading, and also by EFF's experience with HTTPS everywhere. So you're probably familiar with the strict transport security header. And there's this first visit problem. The first time you visit a website, how do you know that it supports HTTPS? You're vulnerable that first time you visit. So Chrome and Firefox take the approach of preloading a number of websites into the browser build and say, okay, we already have an HSTS header for these, which seems, oh, that won't scale, but you know, there's on the order of hundreds of sites getting HSTS preload this way, and they cover a significant fraction of the encrypted web. Similarly, EFF has this cool browser extension, HTTPS everywhere, which is at its core a list of sites that support HTTPS. And it actually, scales surprisingly well, just a simple list, right? We help out, I think around 300,000 users to incrementally improve their security with that extension. Similarly, with starttls, there's the potential to improve security for millions of users with a fairly straightforward list. So we provide a essentially meta configuration JSON file that lists these are the email recipient domains that we know support starttls and are likely to continue to support starttls. Yeah, did you have a comment?
What's that?
Oh, sorry, I thought I heard something.
No, I think there wasn't.
Okay, great. So, for instance, if you are trying to send mail to gmail.com and you connect to one of Google's mail servers, you should just know it supports starttls. And if you connect to a Gmail mail server and it doesn't present you with the starttls statement saying, hey, let's do encryption, then there's a couple possibilities. Most likely is some sort of glitch in the network or a temporary misconfiguration. And in that situation, you want to queue the mail rather than sending it in plain text and try again later once the network problem or the configuration problem has been resolved. In the case that it's a man-in-the-middle attack, we also don't want to send, we especially don't want to send the email in plain text. So again, you want to queue the mail. And eventually, if you can't get through without a man-in-the-middle going on, bounce back to the user. So we're starting out centralized. We do have a notion in spec of being able to pull policies from multiple sources. So before we get too much into the detail, I wanted to talk briefly about Dane, if you look at the earlier starttls talk. So there's a great spec in the works at the W3C by Victor Duchovny to use Dane for SMTP. And so the notion is, if your domain is signed, you can use DNSSEC to provide secure information that states both use starttls for my domain, and here is the key that you should expect when you negotiate starttls with my mail server. So it's a great spec, and it's usable in postfix today if you want to try turning it on. We're pursuing an additional parallel track because what we found is many of the large mail providers are having trouble rolling out DNSSEC. It's a challenging spec to deploy, and it might be years down the line before, say, gmail.com or yahoo.com is a signed zone. And similarly, another existing infrastructure that comes up frequently when we talk about starttls everywhere is SPF, or Sending Policy Framework. But we're actually not trying to apply policy to the sender side. So in other words, Sender Policy Framework would apply, say, when you receive email from yahoo.com, you look at Yahoo's SPF to see what policies you should apply to it. This is the reverse. We would actually want to say, when you send mail to yahoo.com, what policies you should apply. Because on the inbound leg, you don't have as much control to, say, queue the mail or do analysis. So there are a few different distribution techniques we have. You can pull the config directly from our GitHub repo. We're planning to deploy signed tags not too long from now so that you can validate that it's a good configure that. And we're also recommending that everybody who deploys our code do it with some form of auto-updating of the config so that if, say, some domain legitimately turns off starttls forever, hopefully that won't happen, we don't want that to affect mail deliverability. That's one of our main goals for this product, is to not have a detrimental impact on deliverability. So that's why we'd like to be able to push updates. Eventually, we want to get this into the Debian repos as a first-class package that you can just install, and it will do all the right things for you. And then in some large-scale production scenarios, your mail server might not have direct outbound access to the internet except on port 25. You might have a firewall in place. So you can also fetch config on a machine in your corpnet or whatever machine you do deploys from, and then push out across the open network. So here's an example of the policy database from our design doc. Again, the design doc is at that GitHub repo. So the main thing here is if there's a recipient domain in the file, it's in there because it supports starttls. That's kind of the baseline, and everything else is mostly gravy. We support a few extra features, like you can specify a minimum TLS version. So if you expect TLS 1.2 from a server and you get TLS 1.0, that might be an attempt to downgrade you into a weaker, safer suite. There's also one of the interesting challenges in doing strong encrypted authenticated starttls is that the mapping from recipient domain to mail server is itself insecure. When you want to send mail to yahoo.com, you have to say dig mx.yahoo.com, and you get, say, ms1.yahoodns.net. And in the absence of DNSSEC, that binding is insecure. So it's similar for HTTP, right? So when you DNS lookup www.google.com, that could be, you could be spoofed, right? If you're attending Passwordscon or DEF CON, you probably are being spoofed. But you get to rely on the TLS, the X59 certificate that you're served, in order to validate that you're talking to the best server. So similarly, with mail servers, usually if you go to the trouble of getting a signed certificate, the name it's valid for is going to be that MX host name. So we provide that indirection in order to make it easier to validate certificates. So we've got a demo of this actually working, which I think Jan is going to show from her end to avoid any video latency problems.
Yeah. All right, demo time. Sorry, that was kind of loud for a second. Ooh, it's on YouTube. Sweet. So it's again going to be Jacob talking, so I better turn up the volume.
Favorite virtual machines. So up top we have the sender machine, and down below we have the recipient machine. These people have postfix installed as pre-configured by the Debian package. So first let's take a look at the default config for postfix on the sender machine.
Oh, yeah. That's important.
Yeah.
Theater mode, full screen.
So we see what we're looking for here is SMTP TLS security level. It's not present, which means the sender will not attempt TLS to the recipient domain. So we can check that. Let's watch the logs of the recipient domain. And we're going to send an email from the sender machine to the recipient machine.
Yeah, so for people who can't hear, there's two Vagrant instances, and one of them is the sender, and one of them is the receiver. And by default, you don't have like secure TLS policies. So Jacob is sending some stuff.
Okay, we see on the receiving end that was delivered. Now we want to look at the headers.
Let's look at the headers.
We see here we got don't trust email, and in the headers we see it was received from sender.example.com using
I think Adobe crashed in the middle of that. Oh man. Thanks for the malware, whoever did that. That was great. I think running like a YouTube video through Google Hangout is gonna be worse. Alright, here we go.
And what we're looking for here is ESMTPS, which is what it would show if the message was encrypted.
Cool.
So now we're going to run the starttls configurator, which should provide us with a good default configuration on the sending box. So we're going to npa config generator on our testing config, and put the results under etc postfix. And sudo. Okay, so now when we look for SMTPLS in main.config, we see two things. One, security level is may. So that means when we connect to a remote host, if that host claims it supports starttls, we'll use it.
Right, so Jacob just ran some commands from our config script, and now his postfix config will enforce TLS
This
policy.
is where we say, for this list of hosts, you should always use starttls. So we can check out the contents of this particular policy. Again, because this is our test harness, it just has one host, validexamplerecipient.com, and the policy is to always encrypt when communicating with that host. So now we restart postfix.
Now we restart postfix.
And now let's watch the logs again as we send another man. Maybe email isn't so bad, to say. So we can see here, we received mail from the sender. Now we want to check, was it encrypted? See down there at the bottom, view the headers, and look at that. Received from sender.example.com.
Cool.
Using TLS version 1.1 with cipher ACDH AES256 SHA. So that's great. But what we really want to see is what happens when there's a man-in-the-middle attack. Someone is preventing valid example recipient from advertising its starttls support to the sender. Well, the simple way to simulate that is just by turning off starttls on validexamplerecipient.com. So we'll edit the postfix configs here on the bottom. And here's the parameter. Note it's SMTP-D use TLS. So this controls whether it supports TLS on the receiving end. So we set that to no. And we restart the service. So now, when we send a very important email,
Okay, cool. Demo is almost over.
you can see on the bottom a connect from the sender, and then an immediate disconnect. And there's no mail delivered in between.
Wow, that is amazing. We just thwarted a man-in-the-middle attack because we changed our TLS policies. I'm going to end the demo there because I think that was the coolest part. How do I stop this? YouTube. I'll just crash Adobe again. Okay, sweet. Jacob, can you still hear us? Okay, yeah. Sorry, guys, the demo was kind of not loud. But we'll send out a video link if you really want to check it out. Basically, we did the whole start TLS thing and set up TLS policies. Great. So again, we're EFF, starttls everywhere. We'd love to get feedback on it and have people look at it and run it on your mail servers. So that'd be great. I would also like to take this moment to announce that we are hiring for the technology staff at EFF. And if you join, you won't have to do annoying things like do presentations over Google Hangouts with a slideshare and a YouTube video 99% of the time. Yeah. So I can take a few quick questions, but we got to get out of here in like 2 minutes. Yeah, Dan.
I noticed that things were listed by MX domains. Oh, so I noticed that
You're talking about this slide, which people can't see that one.
Right,
yeah.
right. So in the JSON, things are listed by MX domains. Now, maybe these big, huge organizations have everything together, but most email administrators will fess up that they've got some MX backup that is just not up to date with everything else they do.
Right. So to repeat the question for Jacob, who can't hear you, so the question was, so we list MX domains in this JSON config file, but large email companies will have like backup MX domains that are not necessarily up to date and whatever. So how do you deal with the backups? Jacob, do you want to take this question?
Sure. If I understand the question right, I think it's actually the other way around, that, home sysadmins are more likely to have a shady backup MX that doesn't have a correct cert.
Yeah.
And that's true. We do a double checking phase before we add anything to config. And unless all of your MX domains have all these properties we're looking for instance, supporting starttls or having a valid cert, we wouldn't put your domain in. And so if you specifically wanted to be a part of starttls everywhere, you'd have to kind of get your house in order and then email us. And so in other words, we don't want to include recipient domains that have MX records that wouldn't validate or that don't support starttls, because that would defeat the purpose of having that backup domain.
Cool. Thanks. Can we take one more question, or are we? Okay, we're out. Sorry. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks, Jacob.